Number 10. Mandrake. The year is 1928. Inside a quiet laboratory in Berlin, German pharmacologist Louis Lewin finishes what may be the most comprehensive study ever written on humanity's oldest psychoactive plants. He compares opium, cannabis, henbane, belladonna, dozens of species once feared, worshipped, and consumed by ancient civilizations. Yet when his work is complete, one plant stands above all the others. Not because it was the strongest, not because it was the deadliest, but because no other plant had shaped the myths, medicine, and superstitions of so many cultures for so many thousands of years. Its name was Mandrake. By then, Mandrake had already been part of human history for at least 6,000 years. It appeared in Egyptian medical texts, Greek pharmacology, Roman surgery, Jewish scripture, Arab medicine, and medieval European folklore. Few plants had crossed so many civilizations without ever losing their reputation for mystery. At first glance, however, Mandrake hardly looks remarkable. Its broad green leaves spread flat against the ground in a simple rosette. Soft purple flowers bloom close to the soil before giving way to round, yellow-orange fruits that smell surprisingly sweet. Ancient Hebrew texts even referred to them as love apples. To an ordinary traveler, Mandrake would appear to be nothing more than another wild Mediterranean herb growing quietly beneath the sun. But no one searched for its flowers. No one cared about its fruit. The real treasure lay beneath the earth. Its thick taproot often divided into 2 large branches, occasionally 4, sometimes with smaller side roots resembling arms. The result was astonishingly human. Some roots looked uncannily like tiny people buried upside down beneath the soil. 2 legs, a torso, even the suggestion of a head. To ancient harvesters, pulling a mandrake from the ground felt less like collecting a plant and more like uncovering a buried body. That strange appearance helped give birth to one of history's most famous legends. Across the ancient Mediterranean and later throughout medieval Europe, people believed mandrake was alive. Not merely living like any other plant, alive in a far more unsettling sense. According to the legend, the moment its root was pulled from the ground, it screamed, not with a sound like breaking wood or tearing roots, but with the shriek of a human voice. Anyone who heard that scream would die instantly. The belief became so widespread that elaborate harvesting rituals developed across Europe and the Middle East. Rather than pulling the root themselves, gatherers first loosened the surrounding soil with careful digging. Then they tied a rope around the exposed root. The other end was fastened to a dog. Standing safely at a distance, the harvester called the animal. The frightened dog ran. The mandrake tore free from the earth. The scream was released, and according to tradition, the dog died in the owner's place. Whether anyone truly believed the ritual worked no longer matters. What matters is that generations of people repeated it. Across centuries, across cultures, for a single plant. Legends alone, however, do not explain mandrake's extraordinary reputation. Chemistry does. Modern laboratory analysis has revealed that mandrake contains an unusually powerful combination of tropane alkaloids. Among them are scopolamine, hyoscyamine, and atropine. Each affects the human nervous system in profoundly different ways. Scopolamine can produce vivid hallucinations, confusion, memory loss, and complete disorientation. Hyoscyamine relaxes muscles throughout the body while slowing many involuntary functions. Atropine, still used in emergency medicine today, can reverse certain forms of poisoning, increase heart rate, and dilate the pupils. Together, they create one of the most potent natural chemical cocktails found in any medicinal plant. The difference between medicine and poison depends almost entirely on dosage. A small amount may calm pain. A slightly larger amount can induce unconsciousness. A little more can stop the heart. Long before chemistry existed as a science, ancient physicians had already learned this through experience. By the 1st century CE, The Greek physician Dioscorides described Mandrake as a surgical anesthetic. Patients facing amputations, cauterization, or other agonizing procedures were given wine infused with mandrake root before the operation began. The goal was simple, not to eliminate pain completely. That would have been impossible. But to send the patient into a deep sleep from which they might not remember the procedure at all. More than 1,800 years before ether anesthesia, surgeons were already attempting to silence pain using a plant growing wild along the Mediterranean coast. It was one of humanity's earliest forms of chemical anesthesia. Yet every physician understood the danger. There was no precise measurement, no standardized concentration, no modern pharmacology, only experience. Too little, the patient awoke screaming. Too much, the patient never awoke again. Perhaps that uncertainty explains why Mandrake inspired so much fear. It blurred the line between healing and killing more completely than almost any other ancient medicine. The same root capable of easing unbearable suffering could just as easily end a life. Even today, scientists continue studying the compounds first discovered in Mandrake. Modern medicine still uses atropine in emergency rooms around the world. Scopolamine patches help prevent motion sickness. Related compounds remain essential tools in surgery and ophthalmology. The chemistry survived. The rituals did not. The dogs stopped running. The stories faded into folklore. But beneath the dry soils of the Mediterranean, Mandrake continues to grow, exactly as it has for thousands of years. Its roots still twist into strangely human forms. Its chemistry remains almost unchanged. And every time archaeologists uncover another ancient medical text mentioning its name, they are reminded of a remarkable truth. Long before laboratories, microscopes, or pharmaceutical companies, humanity had already discovered a plant powerful enough to put someone to sleep, or powerful enough to make sure they never woke up again. Number 9. Kykeon. The year is 415 BC. Athens is at the height of its power. Its philosophers debate the nature of reality. Its sculptors carve marble that will survive for millennia. Its playwrights fill vast theaters with stories that still shape Western literature today. Yet every autumn, something extraordinary happens. Thousands of Athenians leave the city in complete silence, rich and poor, soldiers and merchants, poets and politicians. They walk nearly 22 kilometers along the sacred way to a small sanctuary called Eleusis. There, they disappear behind enormous stone walls. No outsiders are allowed inside. No spectators are permitted to watch. The ceremony lasts through the night. When the initiates finally emerge, many are in tears. Others remain completely silent. Some claim they are no longer afraid of death, and every single one swears an oath never to reveal what happened inside. For nearly 2,000 years, that promise is never broken. The ritual becomes known as the Eleusinian Mysteries. The penalty for revealing its secrets is death. Yet remarkably, no initiate ever leaves behind a detailed description of the ceremony itself. Not Plato, not Cicero, not Plutarch, not the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Some of the greatest minds in history participated in the ritual. None betrayed its secret. At the center of the mystery stood a single drink, a cloudy liquid served in an ordinary clay cup. Its name was Kykeon. Ancient texts describe its ingredients with surprising simplicity. Barley, water, mint, nothing more. To modern eyes, it sounds less like a sacred potion and more like a farmer's evening meal. Certainly nothing capable of transforming a person's understanding of life and death. Yet ancient writers consistently described the experience in extraordinary terms. The Roman statesman Cicero, himself an initiate, later wrote that the mysteries had given humanity nothing greater than the knowledge of how to live joyfully and how to die with hope. The Greek playwright Sophocles declared that those who experienced the mysteries alone truly understood what awaited after death. These were not naive villagers repeating folklore. They were among the most educated people of the ancient world. Something inside Eleusis profoundly changed them. But what? For centuries, historians assumed the answer was purely religious, perhaps elaborate ceremonies, hidden statues, secret teachings, symbolic dramas performed by priests beneath torchlight. Then, in 1978, an unexpected theory emerged. Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann, the scientist who first synthesized LSD, joined classical scholar Carl Ruck and ethnomycologist R. Gordon Wasson to investigate the ancient drink. Their conclusions stunned both historians and pharmacologists. Perhaps Kykeon wasn't simply a ritual beverage. Perhaps it was chemically active. Their attention focused on the barley. Under certain conditions, barley can become infected by a fungus called Claviceps purpurea, better known as ergot. The same fungus from which modern scientists eventually isolated lysergic acid, the molecular foundation that led to the development of LSD. Hofmann proposed an astonishing possibility. If the priests of Eleusis understood how to prepare infected barley correctly, they might have extracted psychoactive compounds while avoiding the deadly toxins responsible for ergot poisoning. In other words, more than 2,300 years before modern chemistry understood these molecules, ancient Greek priests may have been administering a carefully controlled psychoactive ritual. Not to ordinary people, but to philosophers, generals, poets, statesmen, the intellectual elite of the ancient Mediterranean. No direct proof has ever confirmed the theory. No surviving cup contains residue that can be tested. No written recipe has ever been discovered, because the secret disappeared completely. In 396 AD, the Visigoths invaded Greece and destroyed much of the sanctuary at Eleusis. Shortly afterward, the Christian emperor Theodosius I outlawed the ancient pagan mysteries. The priesthood was dissolved. The ceremonies ended forever. Whatever knowledge had been passed from one generation of priests to the next vanished almost overnight. Not gradually, not partially, completely. No measurement survived. No preparation methods. No harvesting techniques. No instructions explaining which barley to use, or when. If Kykeon truly contained a psychoactive ingredient, the recipe died with the last initiate who carried it. Today, archaeologists continue excavating the ruins of Eleusis. The massive telesterion, where thousands once gathered in darkness, still stands in broken stone. Visitors can walk through its silent foundations. They can trace the sacred way from Athens. They can even hold fragments of the same pottery from which Kykeon was once consumed. But one thing remains forever beyond reach: the experience itself. Whatever happened after that cloudy drink touched the lips of Plato, whatever inspired Cicero to speak of death without fear, whatever convinced generations of the ancient world's greatest thinkers to guard its secret more faithfully than their own writings, has been lost for over 16 centuries. Perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding Kykeon isn't whether it contained an ancient psychoactive compound. It's that one of history's most influential experiences shaped Western civilization, yet left behind almost nothing except a name, a broken temple, and an empty cup. Number 8. San Pedro. The year is 1972. High in the Peruvian Andes, archaeologist Richard Berger walks through the ancient ceremonial center of Chavin de Huantar, nearly 3,200 meters above sea level. The temple is unlike anything he has seen before. Massive stone corridors disappear into darkness. Narrow passageways twist beneath the mountain. Hidden ventilation shafts carry cold mountain air through underground chambers, producing eerie whistles that echo through the stone. Nothing here feels accidental. Every wall appears designed to manipulate the senses. Then Berger notices a carving. A supernatural figure stares outward with enormous feline fangs and serpent-like hair. Clutched firmly in one hand is a tall, ribbed cactus. There is no doubt about its identity. It is San Pedro. That single carving changes how archaeologists understand one of the oldest civilizations in South America, because it suggests the temple was never simply a place of worship. It may have been designed around the effects of a single psychoactive plant. San Pedro, scientifically known as Echinopsis pachanoi, has grown along the slopes of the Andes for thousands of years. Unlike the small desert cactus known as peyote, San Pedro grows into towering green columns that can reach 6 meters in height. Its thick flesh stores water through long mountain droughts. Once each year, enormous white flowers bloom for a single night before fading with the morning sun. To most people, it looks like nothing more than another cactus. Inside, however, it contains one of nature's most remarkable compounds: mescaline. Modern chemistry identifies mescaline as a naturally occurring psychedelic, capable of profoundly altering human perception. Unlike many psychoactive plants, San Pedro works slowly. Very slowly. After drinking it, little happens for the first hour. Sometimes two. Then, almost unnoticed, the world begins to change. Colors become richer. Sounds seem to travel farther. Time stretches. Ordinary thoughts dissolve into patterns that feel strangely significant. The experience often lasts 12 hours or more, longer than almost any naturally occurring psychedelic known to science. For the Chavin people, that duration appears to have been the point. Excavations at Chavin de Huantar reveal evidence that the ceremonies unfolded over an entire night. Pilgrims entered narrow underground galleries illuminated only by flickering torchlight. The stone passages forced visitors to move in single file. Hidden channels beneath the floors carried rushing water, producing deep echoes that sounded almost supernatural. Cold air drifted unexpectedly through carefully engineered ventilation shafts. Nothing could be seen clearly. Nothing sounded familiar. Everything inside the temple amplified uncertainty. Then came the drink. Preparing San Pedro was no simple task. The cactus had to be harvested, its tough outer skin removed, the inner flesh sliced into thick pieces before being boiled for many hours. As the water slowly evaporated, the liquid transformed into a dense green brew with an intensely bitter taste. Producing enough for a single ceremony required enormous effort. Some cacti needed more than a decade to reach full size. Years of growth, consumed in a single night. Archaeologists have discovered stone bowls containing traces of cactus residue inside ceremonial areas at Chavin, strengthening the connection between the temple and the plant. Combined with the carved images, the evidence suggests San Pedro wasn't merely present, it was central. The temple itself appears almost perfectly synchronized with the drug's effects. As the mescaline gradually intensified over several hours, initiates remained trapped within an architectural environment specifically designed to overwhelm the senses. Echoes bounced unpredictably through the tunnels. Shadows shifted across carved stone faces. The sound of flowing water seemed to come from every direction at once. To someone experiencing an altered state of consciousness, the underground complex must have felt alive. Many archaeologists now believe the architecture functioned as part of the ritual itself. The stone corridors weren't simply hallways, they were instruments. Every sound, every gust of wind, every beam of light had been carefully controlled. Not to entertain visitors, but to shape what they experienced while the cactus transformed their perception. The Chavin civilization flourished for nearly 700 years, influencing cultures across much of the central Andes, long before the rise of the Inca Empire. Then, gradually, it disappeared. The temples remained. The carvings survived. The cactus continued growing on the surrounding mountains. But the ceremonies themselves were lost. No written instructions explain what priests said inside those underground passages. No surviving text describes what initiates were expected to see. No record tells us why generations of pilgrims climbed into the Andes seeking this experience. Only the stone remains. Today, San Pedro is still used in traditional healing ceremonies throughout parts of Peru and Ecuador. Scientists understand its chemistry. Pharmacologists know how mescaline interacts with the brain. Yet chemistry alone cannot explain why an entire civilization carved its sacred plant into temple walls. Or why they built one of the most sophisticated ceremonial complexes in the ancient Americas around a cactus that took 15 years to grow and only one night to change a person's understanding of the world. Number 7. Blue Lotus. The year is 1922. After years of searching beneath the scorching Egyptian sun, British archaeologist Howard Carter finally peers through a small opening into a tomb that has remained sealed for more than 3,000 years. When asked whether he could see anything inside, Carter famously replied, "Yes, wonderful things. Golden shrines, jewelry, chariots, weapons, statues." The untouched burial chamber of Tutankhamun would become one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. Yet among the gold and precious treasures, archaeologists noticed something far more delicate. Scattered carefully across the young pharaoh's body were the dried petals of a pale blue flower. Not one, not two, dozens. Some had been woven into garlands placed around his neck, others rested gently upon his chest. The flower was unmistakable: the Egyptian blue lotus. At first, Egyptologists assumed the blossoms were purely decorative. Ancient Egyptians surrounded themselves with flowers. Surely these petals were simply symbols of beauty or rebirth. But the deeper archaeologists looked into Egyptian art and medicine, the stranger the flower became. The blue lotus appears everywhere. It blooms across the walls of the Temple of Karnak. It decorates the tombs of nobles in the Valley of the Kings. It rests in the hands of priests, musicians, queens, even the gods themselves. Again and again, artists painted nobles lifting the flower to their noses, as though inhaling something invisible. For centuries, historians dismissed the gesture as symbolic. Modern chemistry tells a different story. The plant Nymphaea cerulea contains two biologically active compounds, apomorphine and nuciferine. Apomorphine interacts directly with dopamine receptors in the human brain. Today, doctors use related compounds to help treat Parkinson's disease and certain neurological disorders. Nuciferine produces mild sedation while creating feelings of relaxation and gentle euphoria. Neither compound causes the violent hallucinations associated with stronger psychoactive plants. Instead, they create something much subtler: a dreamlike calm, a gentle separation from ordinary awareness. The boundary between waking and sleeping begins to soften. Researchers now believe ancient Egyptians rarely consumed the flower directly. Instead, they soaked the blossoms in wine. Over many hours, alcohol slowly extracted the plant's active alkaloids, creating an infused ceremonial drink. Ancient banquet scenes suddenly began to make sense. Murals from the New Kingdom repeatedly show guests drinking wine while holding blue lotus flowers close to their faces. Not merely admiring them, using them. The combination was remarkably sophisticated. Wine relaxed the body. The blue lotus enhanced the experience. Together, they produced a mild, altered state, unlike ordinary intoxication. Thousands of years before pharmacology existed, Egyptians had already discovered a method for extracting psychoactive compounds using alcohol as a solvent. The flower's importance extended far beyond banquets. Every morning, the blue lotus opened with the rising sun. Every evening, it slowly closed and disappeared beneath the surface of the Nile. To the Egyptians, this daily cycle mirrored the journey of the sun god Ra. Born at dawn, dying at dusk, returning again with the next sunrise. The flower became one of Egypt's greatest symbols of rebirth. It represented resurrection itself. That explains why blue lotus petals appeared inside royal tombs. Tutankhamun wasn't buried beneath flowers simply because they were beautiful. The blossoms accompanied him on his journey into the afterlife. They symbolized awakening after death, a promise that life, like the flower, would bloom again. Even more intriguing are the paintings found inside private tombs. Many depict elegant women wearing blue lotus blossoms behind their ears, or holding them close during intimate celebrations. The same flower appears in scenes of music, dancing, fertility, and romance. Modern pharmacologists point out that apomorphine also influences pathways associated with desire and arousal. Whether ancient Egyptians understood the chemistry is impossible to know, but they certainly understood the effect. Through observation rather than laboratories, they learned what the flower could do, generation after generation, for over 1,000 years. Then, as Egypt's ancient religious traditions disappeared, so did much of that knowledge. The rituals faded. The recipes vanished. Only the artwork remained. For centuries, people admired the blue lotus without realizing they were looking at one of history's oldest psychoactive plants. Today, scientists can identify every major compound inside the flower. They can explain how those molecules interact with the human brain. They can recreate extracts in modern laboratories. But chemistry alone cannot explain why priests carried it into temples, why artists painted it beside nearly every sacred ritual, or why someone carefully placed its petals across the body of a 19-year-old pharaoh before sealing his tomb forever. Perhaps the blue lotus was never simply a flower. Perhaps it was a bridge between waking and dreaming, between life and death. between the world the Egyptians could see and the one they believed waited beyond it. Number 6. Henbane. The year is 1998. Archaeologists excavating a Bronze Age burial in eastern Scotland carefully sift through dark, compacted soil that has remained undisturbed for nearly 4,000 years. Most of the discoveries are expected: fragments of pottery, animal bones, burned wood from an ancient funeral pyre. Then one researcher notices dozens of tiny black objects scattered beside the human remains. At first, they resemble ordinary seeds, nothing unusual. But laboratory analysis reveals something remarkable. They belong to henbane, a plant so poisonous that modern toxicologists warn even small amounts can cause hallucinations, complete confusion, respiratory failure, and death. The obvious question follows: why would anyone bury such a dangerous plant beside the dead? The discovery wasn't an isolated case. Over the following decades, archaeologists uncovered henbane seeds in prehistoric graves across Britain, Germany, Denmark, and Scandinavia. Some were intentionally placed inside burial urns. Others appeared alongside ritual objects or ceremonial fires. Again and again, the same deadly plant surfaced in places associated with death, ritual, and the supernatural. Whatever henbane meant to these ancient societies, it was clearly far more than a weed. Scientifically known as Hyoscyamus niger, henbane grows throughout Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. It is not a beautiful plant. Its thick leaves are sticky to the touch. Its flowers are a sickly yellow, streaked with deep purple veins that resemble dried blood. Even its smell has been described as foul, somewhere between rotting meat and damp tobacco. Few wild plants appear less inviting, yet hidden inside its leaves and seeds is one of nature's most dangerous chemical combinations. Like Mandrake, henbane produces scopolamine and hyoscyamine, powerful tropane alkaloids that attack the nervous system. But unlike many psychedelic plants, henbane is not a psychedelic. It belongs to a far rarer and more disturbing category known as a deliriant. The difference is profound. Psychedelics usually alter reality while leaving the user aware that the experience is caused by a drug. Deliriants do something entirely different. They erase the boundary between reality and hallucination. People don't simply see visions. They speak to people who are not there. Walk through buildings that never existed. Smoke imaginary cigarettes. Hold conversations that disappear the moment consciousness returns. Many victims later remember almost nothing. To them, the hallucinations were not dreams. They were reality itself. Modern hospitals occasionally encounter accidental henbane poisoning. Patients have reported seeing insects crawling across walls, talking with invisible family members, or wandering through cities that vanished the moment the drug wore off. Ancient people had no neurological explanation for such experiences. To them, the visions were evidence that another world truly existed. That belief may explain why henbane became so closely associated with prophecy, magic, and warfare. One of the most controversial theories involves the legendary Viking berserkers. Medieval chronicles describe warriors who charged into battle seemingly immune to pain. They bit their shields, ignored terrible wounds, attacked friend and foe alike in uncontrollable fury. For centuries, historians assumed the accounts were exaggerated. Then, pharmacologists noticed something unusual. Scopolamine poisoning can produce many of the same symptoms: extreme aggression, confusion, reduced awareness of injury, complete amnesia afterward. No direct archaeological evidence proves Viking berserkers used henbane before battle, but excavations of Viking settlements have uncovered henbane seeds in several ritual contexts, keeping the possibility alive. Another mystery surrounds the famous Oracle of Delphi. For centuries, pilgrims traveled across Greece seeking guidance from the priestess of Apollo. Ancient writers described her entering ecstatic trances before delivering prophecies that shaped the decisions of kings and generals. Various explanations have been proposed: natural gases rising from faults beneath the temple, burning herbs, sacred vapors. Among the plants suggested by several researchers is henbane. Its alkaloids could produce vivid visions, disorientation, and altered speech, remarkably similar to ancient descriptions of prophetic trance. The evidence remains inconclusive, but the chemistry fits surprisingly well. Henbane's darkest chapter arrived much later. During the late Middle Ages, European texts describing witches' ointments repeatedly mention a familiar combination of plants: belladonna, mandrake, and henbane. Mixed with animal fat, these preparations were applied directly to the skin. Those accused of witchcraft later described impossible experiences: flying through the night, meeting spirits, attending gatherings that seemed completely real. Modern pharmacologists recognize many of these accounts as classic symptoms of tropane alkaloid intoxication. The users were not imagining that they believed they had flown. Within the altered state created by henbane, they genuinely experienced it. To them, the journey was real. The chemistry had simply rewritten reality itself. Today, researchers understand exactly why henbane is so dangerous. They know how its alkaloids block acetylcholine receptors throughout the brain and body. They know why the line between medicine and poison is so impossibly thin. Yet one mystery remains. For at least 4,000 years, generation after generation deliberately cultivated, transported, and buried one of the most toxic plants in Europe. Not by accident, not out of ignorance, but because they believed it opened a door that ordinary consciousness could never reach. Perhaps the greatest lesson henbane leaves behind is not that ancient people feared poisonous plants. It's that sometimes they feared them so much, they also believed they were sacred. Number 5. Ergot. The year is 994 AD. The streets of Aquitaine, France are filled with people screaming in agony. Some clutch their hands as if they are on fire. Others collapse into violent convulsions without warning. Parents watch helplessly as their children begin hallucinating, speaking to invisible figures before falling unconscious. The lucky ones survive. The unlucky ones wake to discover their fingers have turned black, then their feet, then their legs. The flesh dies while they are still alive. Eventually, the dead tissue simply separates from the body. No wounds, no battle, no infection anyone can understand. The disease spreads from village to village, leaving thousands dead. Medieval Europeans call it St. Anthony's fire. For centuries, no one knows what causes it. Some blame demons, others believe it is divine punishment. Priests organize prayers. Physicians prescribe bloodletting. Nothing works. The killer isn't hiding in the air or the water. It's hiding in their bread. The culprit is a fungus called Claviceps purpurea, better known as ergot. Each spring, ergot infects fields of rye and barley across Europe. Instead of healthy grains, the fungus produces long, dark purple structures that replace the seed itself. To an experienced farmer, they resemble tiny black horns growing from the grain. To medieval peasants struggling through famine, they simply looked like damaged kernels. The infected grain was harvested anyway, ground into flour, baked into bread, shared with entire villages. No one realized every loaf carried one of the most chemically complex natural poisons on Earth. Modern chemistry has identified more than 40 different alkaloids inside ergot. Some attack blood vessels, causing them to constrict so severely that fingers, toes, and entire limbs lose their blood supply. Others act directly on the brain, producing hallucinations, muscle spasms, confusion, paranoia, and terrifying seizures. The symptoms varied depending on which alkaloids dominated the harvest. One village might experience mass psychosis, another, mass gangrene. During the largest outbreaks, thousands died within weeks. The epidemic of 994 AD alone is believed to have killed more than 40,000 people across France. Similar outbreaks continued for hundreds of years. Entire communities feared the harvest itself. Yet hidden inside this deadly fungus was a molecule that would eventually transform modern medicine. In 1938, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann, working at Sandoz laboratories in Basel, began studying compounds extracted from ergot. His original goal had nothing to do with hallucinations. He was searching for medications that could improve circulation. Among dozens of experimental compounds, one became known simply as LSD-25. At first, it appeared unremarkable. The project was abandoned. 5 years later, in 1943, Hofmann accidentally absorbed an incredibly small amount through his skin while working in the laboratory. On his bicycle ride home, the world began to dissolve. Colors pulsed with impossible intensity. Ordinary objects appeared alive. Reality itself seemed to bend. Without intending to, Albert Hofmann became the first person in recorded history to experience the effects of lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD. The compound would later become one of the most famous psychoactive substances ever discovered. But Hofmann hadn't created its molecular foundation. Nature had. Hidden inside Ergot for thousands of years, then historians noticed something remarkable. Ancient Greece's most sacred religious ceremony centered around a mysterious drink called Kykeon. The ritual remained secret for nearly 2,000 years, and many of the greatest thinkers in history, including Plato, Cicero, and Marcus Aurelius, participated in it. No one ever revealed exactly what the drink contained. In 1978, Hofmann himself joined classical scholar Carl Ruck and ethnomycologist R. Gordon Wasson to investigate the mystery. Their proposal was extraordinary. Perhaps the barley used to prepare Kykeon had been deliberately infected with ergot. If the priests of Eleusis understood how to extract only certain water-soluble compounds while avoiding the fungus's deadliest toxins, they might have created a controlled psychoactive drink centuries before chemistry even existed. It remains only a hypothesis. No surviving sample has ever been tested. No written recipe has ever been found. Yet the idea continues to fascinate historians, because it would mean one of history's greatest religious experiences may have depended on the careful manipulation of a fungus that also devastated medieval Europe. The same organism capable of killing entire villages may also have inspired some of the most influential philosophical ideas in Western civilization. Today, scientists understand ergot better than ever before. Its alkaloids have led to medications used to treat migraines, control severe bleeding after childbirth, and study neurological diseases. Its chemistry has shaped both medicine and neuroscience. Yet ergot still grows quietly in grain fields around the world. Every harvest is carefully inspected to prevent contamination, not because the fungus has changed, but because humanity finally understands what medieval farmers never could. Sometimes the most dangerous poison doesn't arrive as a snake, or a spider, or a weapon. Sometimes it grows silently inside the very bread that keeps an entire civilization alive. Number 4. Yopo Snuff. The year is 1972. In the windswept highlands of northwestern Argentina, archaeologists carefully excavate a small rock shelter that has been untouched for thousands of years. Among fragments of woven textiles and stone tools, one object immediately captures their attention: a pair of slender tubes carved from hollow bird bones. Beside them lies a beautifully carved wooden tray, stained with a faint greenish-brown residue. At first, they appear to be ordinary ceremonial objects, but laboratory analysis tells a far stranger story. The residue contains traces of bufotenin, one of the most powerful naturally occurring psychoactive compounds known to science. Radiocarbon dating places the artifacts at nearly 4,000 years old. Long before written history reached South America, people were already mastering one of the most sophisticated methods of drug delivery ever developed. The substance was known as yopo. Unlike nearly every other psychoactive plant in history, yopo wasn't eaten. It wasn't brewed into tea. It wasn't smoked. Instead, it was transformed into an incredibly fine powder. The powder came from the seeds of Anadenanthera peregrina, a tall leguminous tree native to South America. Preparing it was anything but simple. The hard seeds were first roasted over fire until their shells cracked. They were then ground into powder using smooth stone mortars before being mixed with ash made from specific plants. That final ingredient was crucial. The alkaline ash changed the chemistry of the mixture, increasing the absorption of its active compounds. Without it, the experience would have been dramatically weaker. Ancient South American cultures had discovered a form of chemical preparation thousands of years before anyone understood the science behind it. But the most astonishing part came next. The powder wasn't swallowed. Instead, it was forcefully blown into the nose through long tubes made from bird bones, jaguar bones, or carefully carved wood. Some tubes were shaped like the letter Y, allowing one person to administer the powder directly into another person's nostrils. Others were designed so users could inhale the powder themselves. Either way, The experience began almost instantly. Within seconds, the recipient's eyes watered uncontrollably. Breathing became difficult. The nose burned intensely. Many users collapsed to the ground before the visions even began. Modern pharmacology explains why. Yopo contains bufotenin, along with smaller amounts of related tryptamine compounds. When absorbed through the nasal membranes, these molecules enter the bloodstream with extraordinary speed. The brain is affected within moments. Users describe brilliant geometric patterns, encounters with supernatural beings, the sensation of leaving the body, and complete detachment from ordinary reality. The experience is brief compared to many other psychoactive substances, often lasting less than an hour, but its intensity can be overwhelming. To the cultures that used it, however, overwhelming was precisely the point. Archaeological discoveries suggest Yopo was never intended for casual use. Snuff trays, inhalation tubes, and carved containers have been uncovered from Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Peru, and throughout the Amazon basin. Many appear inside elite burials. Others accompany ceremonial objects linked to shamans and religious leaders. The drug belonged to ritual, not recreation. Anthropologists believe shamans used Yopo during ceremonies intended to communicate with ancestors, diagnose illness, or seek guidance from spirits. Some Amazonian traditions still preserve versions of these rituals today. Participants describe entering worlds inhabited by animal beings, celestial spirits, and deceased relatives. Whether those experiences originate entirely within the brain or represent something more remains a matter of personal belief. Science can explain the chemistry. It cannot explain the meaning people found within it. One detail has fascinated archaeologists for decades. Unlike ayahuasca, which can be prepared by a single individual, Yopo almost always required another person. Someone had to hold the tube. Someone had to deliver the powder. The ritual demanded trust. The moment the powder entered the nose, control passed completely from one human being to another. The person administering the drug determined the dose. The participant surrendered to whatever followed. That relationship transformed the ceremony into something far deeper than simple intoxication. It became an act of shared responsibility, shared risk, shared belief. Today, scientists can synthesize bufotenin in laboratories and map exactly how it interacts with serotonin receptors inside the brain. They know its molecular structure, its metabolic pathways, its neurological effects. Yet one mystery remains unanswered. How did prehistoric people discover that roasting one particular seed, grinding it with one specific type of ash, then forcing it through the nose instead of swallowing it, would unlock an entirely different state of consciousness? The Amazon rainforest contains tens of thousands of plant species. The odds of discovering such a precise preparation by accident seem almost impossible. And yet, someone figured it out. Thousands of years before chemistry, thousands of years before pharmacology, leaving behind nothing but a handful of carved bone tubes, and the lingering question of how much ancient people understood about the human mind long before science gave it a name. Number 3. Ayahuasca. The year is 2010. High in the Bolivian Andes, archaeologists carefully open a small leather pouch discovered inside a 1,000-year-old ritual bundle buried in the Cueva del Chileno rock shelter. The pouch is remarkably well preserved. Inside are tiny fragments of dried plant material, wooden spatulas, carved bone tubes, a woven headband. At first glance, they appear to be nothing more than the belongings of an ancient shaman. Then the samples are sent to a laboratory. Using modern chemical analysis, researchers identify an astonishing mixture of compounds: cocaine, bufotenin, harmine, and dimethyltryptamine, better known as DMT. The discovery immediately makes headlines around the world, because for the first time, archaeologists have direct chemical evidence that ancient South Americans were carrying the ingredients needed to prepare one of history's most mysterious psychoactive brews: ayahuasca. Unlike every substance we've explored so far, ayahuasca is not a single plant. It is a recipe, and that recipe should never have been discovered by accident. The first ingredient is a thick jungle vine called Banisteriopsis caapi. The vine twists through the Amazon rainforest, climbing high into the forest canopy like a living rope. By itself, it produces little more than mild physiological effects. The second ingredient appears even less remarkable: the glossy green leaves of Psychotria viridis. These leaves contain one of the most powerful, naturally occurring psychoactive compounds ever discovered: DMT. Modern neuroscience knows DMT as an extraordinarily potent molecule. When injected or inhaled, it can produce complete immersion into vivid alternate realities within seconds. Many users describe encounters with intelligent beings, impossible architecture, or landscapes unlike anything on Earth. Yet when swallowed, absolutely nothing happens. The human digestive system destroys DMT before it can ever reach the brain. It should be useless as an oral drug. That is where ayahuasca becomes extraordinary. The vine contains two naturally occurring compounds known as harmine and harmaline. These chemicals temporarily block an enzyme in the digestive system called monoamine oxidase, or MAO. Normally, MAO destroys DMT almost instantly. But once the vine disables that enzyme, the DMT survives. It enters the bloodstream, crosses into the brain, and remains active for several hours. Neither plant works alone. Together, they become one of the most sophisticated natural pharmacological combinations ever discovered. Modern scientists describe this as an example of enzyme inhibition. Ancient Amazonians simply knew which two plants belonged together. That knowledge has puzzled researchers for decades. The Amazon basin contains an estimated 80,000 species of plants. Thousands possess medicinal properties. Hundreds contain biologically active compounds. The odds of randomly selecting these two specific plants and discovering that one allows the other to function inside the human body are astonishingly small. Some ethnobotanists argue that countless generations of experimentation eventually revealed the combination. Others believe careful observation of animals and plants gradually pointed ancient healers in the right direction. Traditional shamans often give a very different answer. When asked how their ancestors first learned the recipe, many simply say, "The plants taught us." To modern science, that sounds poetic. To Amazonian traditions, it is meant literally. Preparing ayahuasca is itself a ritual. The vine is pounded with wooden mallets until its fibers split apart. The leaves are carefully layered between pieces of the crushed vine. Everything is placed into a large pot of water and boiled for many hours, sometimes an entire day. As the liquid slowly reduces, it becomes a thick, bitter brown brew. Its taste is notoriously unpleasant. Many people vomit shortly after drinking it. Within an hour, however, the experience begins. Unlike the explosive onset of inhaled DMT, ayahuasca unfolds gradually. Colors deepen. Time seems to lose its normal rhythm. Thoughts become unusually vivid. For many participants, the experience lasts between 4 and 6 hours. Among indigenous Amazonian cultures, ayahuasca has never been treated as a recreational drug. It is medicine. It is ceremony. It is communication. For centuries, shamans have used it during healing rituals, spiritual guidance, conflict resolution, and rites of passage. The songs sung throughout these ceremonies, known as ikaros, are considered just as important as the brew itself. According to tradition, the songs guide participants through the experience, protecting them as they move through unfamiliar states of consciousness. Anthropologists have documented hundreds of unique ikaros, many passed from teacher to apprentice over generations. Yet no one knows when the tradition truly began. The 1,000-year-old Bolivian pouch proves that complex botanical knowledge existed long before European contact. But it almost certainly wasn't the beginning. It was merely the oldest evidence that happened to survive. Today, neuroscientists continue studying ayahuasca in laboratories around the world. Researchers investigate its potential role in treating depression, addiction, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Its chemistry is now well understood. Its molecular interactions can be mapped with extraordinary precision. Yet one question remains unanswered. How did people living deep within the Amazon rainforest, without microscopes, chemistry, or even writing, discover that two seemingly ordinary plants, growing separately among tens of thousands of others, had to be combined in exactly the right way to unlock a completely different state of consciousness. Perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding ayahuasca isn't what it does to the human mind. It's how ancient people learned a lesson in biochemistry, thousands of years before science even knew enzymes existed. Number 2. Amanita muscaria. The year is 1730. Across the frozen wilderness of Siberia, Swedish officer and explorer Philip Johann von Strahlenberg records an extraordinary custom practiced by the indigenous peoples of the Arctic. He watches as shamans gather brilliant red mushrooms from beneath birch forests at the end of summer. The mushrooms are carefully dried, stored through the long winter, then consumed during ceremonies unlike anything Europeans had ever witnessed. The participants begin singing. Some laugh uncontrollably. Others become completely silent. Several claim they are flying above the tundra. One insists he has spoken with the spirits of his ancestors. To European readers, the stories sound impossible, another traveler exaggerating distant cultures. But over the next 2 centuries, explorers from Russia, Finland, and Norway document remarkably similar rituals among the Koryak, Evenki, Chukchi, and several other Siberian peoples. Again and again, the same mushroom appears, bright red, covered in white spots, recognized today by almost every child on Earth. Amanita muscaria. Unlike psilocybin mushrooms, Amanita muscaria belongs to an entirely different branch of chemistry. Its primary compounds are ibotenic acid and muscimol. Modern neuroscientists describe muscimol as one of the most unusual naturally occurring psychoactive substances ever discovered. Rather than acting primarily on serotonin receptors like LSD or psilocybin, it targets the brain's GABA receptors, altering perception in an entirely different way. The result is deeply unpredictable. Users often describe dramatic distortions in size and distance. Tiny objects appear enormous, mountains seem impossibly close. The body may feel incredibly light, or impossibly heavy. Some report floating above the ground. Others experience vivid waking dreams that merge seamlessly with reality. It is not simply a hallucination. It feels as though the rules governing space, time, and gravity have quietly changed. Yet the mushroom contains a dangerous secret. Fresh Amanita muscaria is poisonous. The ibotenic acid responsible for many of its toxic effects causes severe nausea, vomiting, muscle spasms, and confusion. Consumed carelessly, it can become life-threatening. Ancient Siberian shamans understood this long before toxicology existed. They discovered that drying the mushrooms dramatically reduced the amount of ibotenic acid while increasing the concentration of muscimol. Without knowing the chemistry, they had learned the chemistry through observation, through generations of experimentation. Then they made another remarkable discovery. The Arctic's reindeer loved the mushrooms. Herders frequently observed reindeer digging through deep snow in search of Amanita muscaria. After eating them, the animals behaved strangely. They staggered, ran in circles, appeared startled by invisible objects. Sometimes they leaped into the air for no obvious reason. Modern science confirms that reindeer metabolize the mushroom much like humans do. But traditional shamans noticed something far more important. As the mushroom passed through the animal's body, much of the toxic ibotenic acid was converted into muscimol. The active compound survived. Many of the unwanted side effects did not. Historical accounts describe a practice almost impossible to imagine today. Instead of eating more mushrooms, some shamans drank the urine of reindeer that had consumed them. Others drank the urine of another person who had already taken the mushroom. The muscimol remained pharmacologically active. The most dangerous toxins had been greatly reduced. It was, in effect, an ancient biological filtration system. No laboratory, no chemistry, just careful observation of nature, for thousands of years. Then the story becomes even stranger. During the 1960s, ethnomycologist Gordon Wasson proposed a controversial theory that continues to spark debate today. He noticed a remarkable collection of similarities between Siberian mushroom rituals and one of the world's most recognizable traditions. A man dressed in red and white, living in the far north, traveling with reindeer, entering homes through the roof because heavy snow blocked the doors, bringing gifts during the darkest days of winter. Even the mushrooms themselves were often dried beneath evergreen branches before the ceremonies began. Wasson wondered whether fragments of ancient shamanic traditions had gradually influenced the folklore that eventually became Santa Claus. Most historians reject the idea as too speculative. Others argue that at least some of the similarities deserve serious attention.
No definitive evidence has ever settled the debate. What is certain is that Amanita muscaria has shaped human culture for thousands of years. Its image appears in prehistoric rock art. It survives in Siberian oral traditions. It became one of the most recognizable mushrooms in the world. Yet remarkably few people understand the extraordinary history hidden beneath its familiar appearance. Today, neuroscientists continue studying muscimol to better understand sleep, consciousness, and neurological disorders. The mushroom still grows beneath birch and pine forests across the northern hemisphere. Its chemistry remains exactly as nature designed it. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Amanita muscaria isn't that ancient people discovered one of the world's strangest psychoactive mushrooms. It's that they also discovered how to transform one of nature's most dangerous poisons into a ritual medicine, simply by watching what the reindeer already knew. Number 1. Soma. The year is 1786. In Calcutta, British Orientalist Sir William Jones sits beneath the dim glow of candlelight, translating one of the oldest religious texts ever written, the Rig Veda. Page after page, one mysterious word appears again and again. Not once, not 10 times, but more than 120 times. The word is Soma. The ancient hymns praise it as a god, a sacred drink, a medicine, a source of immortality. Warriors drank it before battle, priests consumed it before speaking with the gods. Kings offered it during the most important ceremonies of the Vedic world. According to the Rig Veda, Soma gave strength to Indra, king of the gods, before he defeated the great serpent Vritra and released the rivers of the earth. It sharpened the mind, expanded consciousness, filled the body with supernatural power. One hymn boldly declares, "We have drunk Soma, we have become immortal." To early European scholars, the meaning seemed obvious. Some extraordinary plant had once existed in ancient India, a plant so important that an entire religion was built around it. The only problem, no one knew what it was. Unlike Mandrake, unlike Blue Lotus, unlike Amanita, Soma had completely disappeared. There was no surviving seed, no preserved leaves, no forgotten recipe hidden inside an ancient tomb. Nothing. Only poems. For more than 2 centuries, historians, botanists, archaeologists, linguists, and pharmacologists have searched for Soma. And every generation has proposed a different answer. Some believed Soma was ephedra, a mountain shrub still growing across Central Asia. The plant contains ephedrine, a powerful natural stimulant capable of increasing alertness, energy, and endurance. Archaeologists strengthened this theory after discovering bundles of ephedra carefully placed inside 5,000-year-old graves at Goner Tepe in present-day Turkmenistan. The plant had clearly played an important ritual role long before written history. Others argued that Soma was Amanita muscaria, the brilliant red mushroom used by Siberian shamans. Its vivid psychological effects seem to match certain poetic descriptions found in the Rig Veda. The theory gained worldwide attention after ethnomycologist R. Gordon Wasson published an influential book in 1968, arguing that the sacred mushroom had inspired one of humanity's oldest religions. But critics quickly pointed out serious problems. The Rig Veda describes Soma as being pressed to release its juice. Mushrooms cannot be pressed in the same way as leafy plants, nor do they produce the golden liquid repeatedly described throughout the hymns. Another group of researchers proposed Syrian rue. Others suggested cannabis. Some believed Soma was a combination of several different plants prepared together. A few even argued that the original species had gone extinct thousands of years ago. With every new theory came new evidence, and new contradictions. Then archaeology entered the debate. Excavations across Central Asia uncovered ritual fire temples belonging to the ancient Bactria Margiana archaeological complex, often called the Oxus civilization. Inside ceremonial vessels, researchers detected traces of plants believed to have been used in sacred rituals. Some contained residues consistent with ephedra, others hinted at different botanical ingredients. Yet none provided definitive proof.
No vessel could confidently be identified as containing Soma itself. The mystery remained unsolved. What makes Soma unique isn't simply that no one can identify it. It's that an entire civilization considered it the center of spiritual life. The Rig Veda devotes more hymns to Soma than to almost any other sacred subject. It was not treated as a recreational drug, nor merely as medicine. It was believed to bridge the gap between humans and the divine. The drink itself became a god, a substance worthy of worship. That idea has fascinated neuroscientists and historians alike. Modern pharmacology can identify thousands of psychoactive molecules. Scientists can explain how they bind to receptors inside the brain, how they alter memory, emotion, perception, consciousness. Yet none of that answers the larger question. Why did one forgotten plant inspire some of the oldest religious poetry ever written? What experience convinced generations of priests that drinking its juice brought them closer to immortality? Perhaps the answer has been lost forever. Today, researchers continue searching the mountains of Afghanistan, Iran, India, and Central Asia. Ancient pollen is analyzed. Residues from ceremonial vessels are tested with increasingly sophisticated instruments. Old botanical theories are constantly re-examined. After more than 200 years of investigation, no consensus has emerged. Soma remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries. Ironically, after exploring 9 of history's most powerful ancient drugs, the final one remains the only substance we cannot identify with certainty. We know it changed civilizations. We know it shaped one of the world's oldest religions. We know millions of people believed in its extraordinary power. But we still do not know what it was. Perhaps that is the perfect ending, because the most powerful ancient drug ever described by humanity may also be the only one that history allowed to disappear without a trace.